Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Operations Committee to order as I'll be chairing it as Councillor Plummer is away. As we gather today, I would respectfully acknowledge on behalf of Council and the community that the City of Pembroke resides on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. It is with this statement that we honor and respect the Algonquins on whose land we reside. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in relation to the items on this Operations Committee agenda? Seeing none. I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Those in favor? That is carried. We have one set of minutes, Operations Committee, December 17th, 2024. I'd entertain a motion for their adoption. I have Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Giacono. Those in favor? That is carried. Any business arising from it? Seeing none. Moving on to new business, we have on-demand turnkey transit services. If I can call upon Madam Treasurer, sorry.
Thank you and good evening. So tonight's report is on the RFP award for RFP 24-08 on-demand turnkey transit services. And I have prepared a presentation to help better explain where the project's at and what the service would look like. So as you may know, this project has been led by both myself as well as Jordan from Left Turn, Right Turn, who's with us this evening to help answer any questions that you might have. And I obviously would be remiss, it's taken a long time to get here, and I would be remiss not to give a shout out to our Deputy Mayor who has moved this file forward for a number of years now. So it's certainly quite a milestone to be at this place right now. So for those of you that don't know, the implementation of this project is managed by the firm Left Turn, Right Turn, and they are a boutique transportation consulting firm with proven experience supporting transit agencies and municipalities from across North America in launching successful on-demand pilot projects to provide public transit to their citizens. So Left Turn, Right Turn has assisted the city with preparing, issuing, and evaluating this request for proposal from transit service providers in Canada. So as I mentioned, it has taken a while to get here. So transit was identified in the strategic plan back in the last term of council. And this potential reintroduction of public transit has been studied by the city for several years. In 2022, we examined transit options through a feasibility study that was in part funded by FCM. And some of the options considered were the traditional fixed route that Pembroke used to have back in the 90s, a taxi rideshare voucher model, as well as van pools, before concluding that a point-to-point on-demand service was the preferred option. So moving that file forward in 2023, a request for information was prepared by myself and with the objective to gain more information from industry on a potential on-demand service. And the city did receive some very valuable information from that process. And that led us into 2024, where we hired Left Turn, Right Turn to help us develop and issue a formal request for proposal. So tonight we're here to decide if we are officially launching an on-demand transit service with the preferred vendor coming out of this RFP process, and if awarded, staff and in conjunction with Left Turn, Right Turn would negotiate a service agreement with the preferred vendor. And if approved, we would look to launch a transit service sometime this summer, sometime between July 7th and August 5th, and we would work out the final details and exact date with the service provider. So a bit of background for the benefit of the public, because I've certainly seen on socials that, I think there's some confusion about how on-demand transit works. So essentially, on-demand transit uses state-of-the-art technology that selects the best route to take people where they want to go. So basically, drivers and transit vehicles will pick up and drop people off without following a fixed route through the city every day. The software will look at, the pickup and destination points and determine the best way to get there, picking people up and dropping people off along the way. And essentially, people request rides through either through an app, through their computer, or by calling a customer service line. And the pickup and drop-off locations are determined within predefined parameters. So, for example, we could have a rule to say we don't want people to have to walk more than 400 meters to their destination or their pickup point. So it's essentially a combination of an Uber using a transit bus with multiple people in it. So the evaluation of proposals was quite a rigorous process. They were fairly large documents to get through based on an evaluation. So the evaluation, the RFP was evaluated by both myself, the CAO, as well as Left Turn, Right Turn. And the preferred vendor in this process is Mobility Transportation Specialists. So they offer a range of transit services with their current customers, and their current customers do include North Granville Transit, as well as York Region Transit and Cobourg Transit. So through their service, they would provide the vehicles and drivers for the service. So they would provide, as per our request for proposal initially, 2 transit vehicles plus 1 backup vehicle, and they would hire and train local drivers at wages that reflect Renfrew County's living wage. They would provide scheduling, dispatch, and customer service. So they would provide all the back office support, including customer service to those who aren't comfortable using an app to request a ride. So you could just call them up to get access to the service. And they would also provide garage storage and vehicle maintenance. So they would store and maintain the vehicles according to MTO standards. The recommended vehicle in their proposal is a Dodge Ram ProMaster P5 side entry. So this is, I think, a very similar vehicle to the vehicles that Handybus uses. So this model can accommodate 6 to 8 ambulatory and 1 to 2 wheelchair or stroller spaces. So this larger type vehicle would be able to service larger pickup locations like the college at the end of class. It does only require a Class G, like regular driver's license, so this facilitates driver recruitment, and its short body provides better maneuverability on local streets. So just one comment about the AODA. The Ontario government does require all transit vehicles to be AODA compliant, even if that's not necessarily the intended use of the vehicle. So in terms of the software, their proposal included use of the Blaze Transit platform. So this is a small company operating out of Montreal that offers a system that's scalable, cost-efficient, and easy to use without compromising functionality. And it includes 4 pieces of software behind it. So there's a transit app for passengers, a drive app for drivers to provide that turn-by-turn navigation. It has a sort of a BI engine for transit administration, which tracks all real-time scheduling, monitoring, and KPI tracking, and it also provides a routing algorithm to try to minimize travel time and environmental impact while maximizing fleet utilization. So they've been, their target audience is essentially small transit services, such as what the municipality of Pembroke is looking at. And that's also what the municipality of North Grenville uses. So as per the RFP, the initial hours of service advertised were Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., Thursdays and Fridays 7 to 10, and Saturdays 8 to 6. It is not proposed to start service on Sundays or stat holidays simply because they're typically low demand and a high cost to operate. And that's something that could be further explored based on actual demand and rider feedback as if we were to move forward with this service. The area of service would be essentially within the boundaries of the city of Pembroke. This project and this service would require property taxes to operate to cover the full costs of the service. So coverage would be confined to city limits, but we would look to extend to include a stop at Walmart in the township of Laurentian Valley to meet expected customer demand. And again, this is something that we could look at and get some feedback on, as we move forward with the project. So some other considerations. There is an ability to collect feedback in the transit app and website. And as part of our project plan, we did include a resident satisfaction survey to occur 6 months after launch, which would target both users and new non-users of the service to make sure that it reasonably meets expectations. And from there, service could be adjusted based on this feedback. So fares, while our initial feasibility study included rate recommendations, this information is a bit old now and would be updated by left turn, right turn, and discussed with the transit committee, with recommendations being brought forward to council for decision. As well, we would also need to look at a cancellation policy to define when users would be charged for cancellations or no-shows. And again, that would be something that would be discussed with the transit committee, and then a formal policy brought forward to council for approval. Certainly, as a service the city has never offered before, we definitely expect some tweaking would be required to meet actual demand. So the proposal, and the way the proposal was structured, does provide some variability. So the city would have the ability to change the total hours of operation or the number of vehicles depending on how requirements actually roll out. So we, according to the proposal, we would be able to change schedules within 15 days notice if no additional driver staffing is required, or 60 days notice if additional staffing is required. And the vendor would be willing to work with us if we were successful in our FCM application, which would require us to switch to an electric fleet. We did also have some provisions in there for consideration of any charters or special requests that some of our key stakeholders or the recreation department might want, and they would be tried to accommodate as long as it does not impact our regular service. So of course, we all want to know about the money. So while fares have not been set, potential revenues have been estimated based on previous forecasts as well as information received from the municipality of North Grenville. And we have evaluated both the RFP as well as the expected financial impact using 3 scenarios. So we did expect initial demand based on the recommendations of left turn, right turn at 6,250 hours annually, again, as provided by 2 transit vehicles and a backup. We did look at it, what if demand is higher than expected? So what if we required an extra vehicle plus an increase to 7,500 hours in total, as well as what if demand isn't as high as expected? So what if we only required 5,000 service hours and 1 less vehicle? So those 3 scenarios are broken up between year 1, 2, and 3. Overall, if we add the impact of the 3 years together, the expected demand would represent a 2.03% levy increase. If demand was lower than expected, it would be a 1.57 levy increase, and a high demand would be 2.25% levy increase. Now, this is similar, the assumptions I used was similar to what was in the draft 2025 budget. So it does assume that the city would receive $500,000 of FCM funding. However, if that funding application was not successful, and we should hear back in a few weeks, then we do have sufficient or close to sufficient reserves that we can just sub in grant money with reserve money and hold our budget as is. So we do anticipate initial ridership of between 1,200 and 1,700 riders a month during the first year of service, and a 1% levy increase on an average residential property is an increase of $31 per year. So there are, obviously, transit comes at a cost, but there are also, many benefits to be derived for our community. So studies have shown that investment in transit generates economic returns in the community and a positive return on investment. So the studies vary in terms of exactly how much economic return you could expect, but I haven't seen a study that says there is no economic return. Transit promotes equity and inclusivity in our community because it facilitates both economic and social inclusion and belonging into the community and being able to participate in all aspects of the community. Transit strives to reduce barriers in accessing critical community service and improve quality of life. And as well, transit provides environmental benefits by aiming to reduce private vehicle usage, decrease traffic congestion, and the greenhouse gas emissions that we emit through the use of private vehicles. As evidenced in the support we've received in our transit committee, we've also received support from our community partners. So we did receive a number of letters of support to support our FCM grant application from the County of Renfrew, from the PBIA, as well as Algonquin College. And we do have in the audience tonight some representatives from Algonquin College showing their support. The Algonquin Students Association, as part of their mandate or their priorities, indicates that they want to ensure that students have accessible and affordable quality transportation across all of their campuses. And obviously that's an issue here at the Pembroke campus. So in terms of next steps, the decision tonight is if council is going to award RFP 24-08. If it is awarded, staff and left turn, right turn will negotiate a formal service agreement and bylaw. We will have to update and finalize an implementation project plan and schedule and hold some transit committee meetings to establish a fare and cancellation policy to be brought forward to council for approval. So with that, I'm just wondering if you have any feedback you'd like to provide. Okay, Jordan's happy with my presentation. So I guess I'll pass it back to the floor.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. And so questions and comments, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Angela, for the great presentation, and Jordan. We started this road to potential transit actually 4 years ago. And we did the feasibility study, and Angela, you and your staff put a lot of work into this. I just want to commend you. It's no easy task to coordinate a project like this, and thank you, Jordan, also. Just want to make it clear that this is phase 2 of the project roadmap that we talked about 3 or 4 years ago. Phase 1 was the feasibility study, and phase 2 was a potential 3-year pilot project with the application to the Green Municipal Fund, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, where we can get up to $500,000 for 2 electric minibuses. If we don't get that, we still go ahead with the gas vehicles. So a 3-year pilot project, I've always said that we need to do the pilot to see if it's going to work, sustainable, affordable, because if it's not used after 3 years, we won't be able to continue. So the final phase was the final implementation of rolling out and deciding, do we want to continue for 4 years after the 3? But you got to do a pilot project, and 3 years is the recommended number through talking with different transit people over the last 3 or 4 years. The original motion a year ago estimated a 3.4% tax increase for the transit. This is 2.03 over 3 years, which is better. It's still an increase, but I do honestly think that if we support this, it'll be a game changer for the community for all the reasons that Angela listed. I'm not going to repeat them, but I think it is worth trying. It's going to grow our community. Even today, the cold, the weather, people walking in the cold, people walking in the heat, it'll lift people up. It'll give those that can't afford, taxis and that, it'll give them a chance to use the transit, get around, give them independence. I was talking to the Director of Social Services for the county at the Roma conference this weekend, and they're fully supportive, and they know that their clients would use it. The college, definitely, Jamie Bramberger's here tonight, and I've talked many times. They're fully supportive of it. They're international students also. They can't get a driver's license. They're working around town. They would benefit from it. So for all those reasons, I'm going to motion that we award the RFP 24-08 to MTS for public transit system and move forward.
Motion seconded by, is it being seconded, Councillor Purcell? Yes. Yes? Okay. Further discussion and comments? Councillor Purcell.
First of all, I'd just like to say, thank you to the Deputy Mayor and the Treasurer for all their hard work in terms of getting us to this point. Way back whenever I started looking at the opportunity to to be a councillor with the City of Pembroke, it was one of the things that it was part of my campaign, was to look at transit options, and one of the things that I did talk about, it had to be feasible. Not only is this solution feasible, it's scalable to meet demand. It's turnkey, meaning we have a provider that's going to really take care of all the requirements in terms of maintaining the fleet, operating the fleet. We also have the appropriate software in place, which really increases the effectiveness in terms of the operations, which I think is great. We've been hearing from Algonquin College. We've been hearing from some of the elderly individuals with special concerns because they can't get across the city, especially in inclement weather conditions. It even makes it worse for individuals. So I think this is an opportunity to create an opportunity for these individuals to get out and enjoy some of what the city has to offer, and participate in various different activities, or go to medical appointments, or to visit department stores and do those kinds of things. So I think it's awesome, and I think it's a small increase. I understand that, but I think it's in terms of the long-term benefits, in terms of the economic benefits that this will create for the City of Pembroke. I think it's well deserved, and I think I have my full support in terms of the implementation of this pilot project. Again, if it's a pilot project, and we have the opportunity to monitor, grab all the statistics, understand, make those tweaks if required, and if after the 3 years, if the ridership is low, well then, I would expect that, I wouldn't expect that, but I would expect that, we would not pursue it any longer. But I do think this is a different model. I do have some friends down in Cobourg and talking about the utilization of the Cobourg model, and it's working really, really well down in Cobourg. So this is some of the feedback that I've received. So I think this is a great initiative for the City of Pembroke. Thank you.
Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Your Worship. To jump to the chase, I'm absolutely going to support this. Like Councillor Purcell, and this might speak to something, that the two new councillors that were elected both supported transit in the election. And like Councillor Purcell, there were the political caveats. It needed to be affordable and it needed to work for us, but certainly we were supporters of it. In fact, the first conversation I had with a member of council was the deputy mayor down at the marina, and instead of telling me how much work this job would be and how many people would complain about you and rip you apart on Facebook, he just wanted to know my position on Facebook or on transit. So that he didn't mention any of the other stuff. I think the city of Pembroke, we're the largest population with Petawawa beside us. Here in Renfrew County, we're densely populated. This isn't like a lot of the rest of the county, and I know there's some other places that have talked about we're too small for transit. But North Grenville is a pretty good comparator to our size. We have a larger college population than the rest of the county, and it was during the election that I think the deputy mayor and I think both must have ran into the same student who was quite keen about transit, and she shared the story with me that in order for her to get she was in the old Salvation Army building, and in order for her to get to Walmart, it was a $20 trip there and a $20 trip back. That's $40 before she bought anything. That's not sustainable for a student. That's you know, taxis certainly serve a purpose, and you know, I was very happy about a year ago to support a new taxi bylaw that helped take away some of the regulations and some of the burdens that were on our taxi service. We also opened up rideshare, which was previously banned by a different bylaw. But to have this transit solution, you know, I think it's necessary. I think of my own family. I have two great aunts that have never drove. They relied on Uncle Jeff and Uncle Bob to drive them around, and you know, my uncles aren't around anymore. It's now my 92-year-old grandfather that drives them around. And you know, what happens if he gives up his license? You know, how are they getting around? Is it $20 taxis to get around town? In terms of a transit system, I think it makes the city of Pembroke more attractive to people that want to come in. I mean, even in terms of just even for those people that think, you know what, I'm never going to use it. I want you to think about some of those families that might have said that, and then all of a sudden we had no school buses. Now, these buses, by numbers, are not going to replace school buses, but for a few lucky families in those mornings, it would have replaced school buses. You know, obviously, if 1,000 people called in, that's not going to work, but certainly the buses would be running, and some people could have potentially utilized that. I also note that there are grants and programs out there, funding opportunities that either require transit or they score for transit. The deputy mayor and I sat in on a housing meeting once, where one of the criteria that they scored on was, is there public transit? In terms of the budget, I'm just astonished that something this large actually came in under our working budget. And I think that says a lot of our staff and certainly Jordan for putting together a proposal document that obviously businesses were able to send in their proposals and to have it underneath what we were perhaps expecting. In this year's budget alone, I want people to know there are at least 5 larger pressures than this. Wages in the city of Pembroke, an increase of $377,000. Asset management, being building maintenance, ditching, $262,000. Risk management, including a new levy stabilization, $350,000. The pool reopening, a pool we already have. The reopening is more than the cost of this transit line item. The OPP, $237,000 increase, thanks to the OPP in the province. That is larger than the budget increase we were talking. So despite the fact that I think this is an extraordinarily important asset for the city to have, and something that I think many hundreds of people in the city of Pembroke will immediately start using, it's not even the biggest budget driver this year. I mean, think about that. The importance versus the cost. Think about that. These are the numbers right now. I believe, Angela, without any other funding partners or anything like that on board. I know there are discussions with some. I'm not going to call them out today, but I know there's discussions with some that there might be additional funding partners that we could have that would actually help us out in terms of this funding. And the last thing that I want to address is a lot of people are saying, we did this before and it didn't work. We did not do this before. First of all, an on-demand system, I think the people of Pembroke are going to love, compared to the old fixed route systems where sometimes you were on a bus for 45 minutes to get across a city that perhaps if you had a car you could have done in 5. So this on-demand transit system is not what we had before. The buses, the the busing system is contracted out. When the city of Pembroke did it the last time, I believe it was city staff and everything that took care of it. I believe it was an internal busing system. This we're contracting out. We're not responsible for the maintenance. We're not responsible for the staffing. So that is good news for the city of Pembroke. And finally, compared to the last time that we did this, we're just not in the 1990s anymore. Like, it's time to bring this city into the 21st century. And having a transit system will make the city, again, easier to use for our own residents. It'll make it more attractive for incoming residents. And then finally with that, I want to thank the treasurer for all of her work. I want to thank Jordan for his work. But most of all, I want to thank Brian for all the work that you did on this. You've been pushing this since before I was on council. You have spent many, many hours on this. I know, because I was on some of those phone calls when you were calling me about this. I would suspect that this would not be here without the work that you've put into this over the last few years. And no, I'm talking, don't interrupt. Procedural, your worship, out of order. No, Brian, I really do mean it. I don't think that this would be here without you pushing for it on the political side. Everything that we do, around this table is based on our own interests. It's based on our own goals for the city, and there's competing things amongst us all the way. But this is something that you've really fought for, and I couldn't respect you more for it. I couldn't thank you more for it. And I think if this passes tonight, the city of Pembroke will owe you a very large debt of gratitude for it. Thanks, Brian.
Councillor Jacquinot?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too think it's an exceptional idea. As Councillor Keel said, times change. We have a closure of a college in Perth. Who knows how that'll impact the local campus here? Perhaps more students, perhaps not. But there is an obvious demand. My only concern is, we're hit with all these little increases. Water bills going up $6.90 a month, so you have $84 or whatever it is, and and then I look, well, it's only going to be a small levy increase over the next 3 years. I'd like to see zero increase on that levy charge and find some innovative ways of coming up with the money so the taxpayer isn't hit with this. And I think there may be ways of doing it. And I'm not saying you're going to hit the same people all the time, but there may be innovative ways of doing it so the taxpayer says, oh my gosh, I'm paying for my water bill. I understand that. I got a clean drink of water. Great. Now I got a ride, but I really don't have to worry about that little extra increase. I think it puts us in a good light. And I too agree with extending congratulations to Deputy Mayor. He's very passionate. And obviously, if it wasn't for the work of folks around the table, it wouldn't be here tonight. But let's try and come up with an innovative idea where the treasurer would be pleased to come and say, and do you know what? I'm so pleased to announce over the next 3-year period, there'll be no levy increase on this because we have somebody offsetting this cost for us. Thank you. But I'll be voting in favor.
Councillor Lafreniere, are you on the line, or Mr. Binky? Can you tell me if she's there? I can't see on this. Did you wish to speak?
I don't know. I can't see me. I can see me. Anyway.
We can now, yes?
Many years ago, Brian, Deputy Mayor and I sat on the Senior Advisory Committee together. And this actually it rose to the top. And Brian would agree with me on that when it came to the seniors. They needed more transportation. My question, though, would be, you have to book it by app, I believe, on your phone. Now, all of us around the table are handy on our phones, but I do know some seniors that wouldn't be able to book it online or on their phone app. Is there another way that can they pick up the phone and give their credit card and purchase tickets that way? I know most of the younger generation, and I'd say up to 75, a lot of people can do it. But when you get into over 75, you might be missing some of those individuals. I'm supporting this wholeheartedly, though. And yes, kudos to Deputy Mayor. He pulled us all along. And if he thought some of us were a little shaky on it, he'd make sure to corner us and say, come on, we really need to do this. So here we are. what can I say? I grew up in Toronto, a single working mother, worked for Bell Canada. If it hadn't been for the TTC, I wouldn't have been able to, go to the local pool, wouldn't be able to go with my friends to different events in Toronto. I always had access to reliable transportation, even though my parent didn't have a vehicle. And I think there's a lot of young people in this town that don't have a job because maybe they live in the West End and they can't work at the mall, et cetera, et cetera. This gives them the opportunity to go to our pool, our newly renovated pool, to go to work, to go meet their friends somewhere. So yeah, kudos. I know it's needed. I like the fact that we are starting small and we're going to grow with it. So I look forward to see how this pilot project goes. And good job, team around the table, because it takes a team. Thank you.
Did you wish to respond to the question?
Yeah, I can. Just to add quickly, the service will have the ability. You will have the ability to book through an app, but also a call in. That is included as part of the service that MTS will provide as a customer service line that you can call to book, but also to just to get more information about the service if you don't want to go through the app or can't go through the app.
Good, so they can call. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then, so from the chair, and I'm just alerting the clerk that I will be requesting a recorded vote. I have always said and continue to have serious concerns about the success, the feasibility of a transit system in Pembroke. We begin with the Paradigm Report, which is the basis of this whole idea of transit in Pembroke. Reread the report. No disparaging comments about the company, but the report itself, starting with 35% of the individuals hadn't even read the information before completing the study. I note that, as is indicated even in the report, that the question was asked of the public who completed it was whether they were prepared to pay $25 more per household for transit. I've looked at the numbers. I see that in year one, we're looking at $178,000, but I also see that if we don't get the grant, we're using a reserve of $253,000 year one, $246,000 year two. And it's not lost on me that those monies are there not because they were a gift or something. The ratepayers were charged a rate increase, and that money, instead of going into the general capital reserve, which traditionally we did, it was tucked away into the reserve for transit. And so what I'm doing is I'm adding the 178 plus the 253 in year one, year two, looking at again the taxation percentage increase, and then throwing the 246,000 on top of it. I'm concerned about ridership. It was alluded to earlier that in terms of Algonquin Perth campus is closing due to the federal government, in part due to federal government cuts regarding international students. I have been in touch with the president, Mr. Boulay, previously, and will be having a Zoom call again with him tomorrow. Make no mistake, I know whenever I travel around in Pembroke, international students play a huge positive impact in our economy. They work here, they study here, certainly contribute to our situation in Pembroke, and I think that there's going to be a huge repercussion if the international students decline for the city of Pembroke, and that isn't a decision of the college. It's not any wrongdoing on their behalf. It's not any wrongdoing on behalf of the city of Pembroke. It's the federal government's decision. We'll see what happens after a new leader is appointed for the Liberals, but there it is. As mentioned earlier, I talked about infrastructure. Certainly, we talk constantly at this council about the asset management plan and the monies required to hit the target, and we're not even hitting the target. And yet, this is why I started the budget cycle, which saying, okay, so there's a demand in terms of staffing, but there's also a demand in terms of infrastructure, and we're not even hitting the target. And yet, we're still looking at an 8.9% increase. And so, what I'm saying is that we're not hitting the target in terms of infrastructure, but we're going to throw something yet else into the mix in terms of a cost to the ratepayers. In terms of promises, it's not lost on me, and I went back today on the internet and looked at different clips of different councillors making comments to various news media, and it's not lost on me that constantly individuals are saying, I'll be the first to say that if it's not successful at the end of the pilot, we'll call it a day. But I also think back to last year when we were going into budget and the majority of council voted to close the pool, not do repairs to the pool, and the outcry that was experienced caused council to do an about face and say, okay, we will do the repairs, we will spend 1.4 million, and we'll attend to that. And I don't expect at the end of a 3-year pilot project that there's going to be that amount of riders that would be as much of an outcry, but I always think back to things that are often said in different circles that I talk to different individuals. Once you give something to someone, it's very difficult to take it back. In terms of private businesses, I certainly have a concern about the effect that transit will have upon private enterprise. And who I'm talking about is the taxi cab companies. So whether it be Valley Cab, Danny's Taxi, any one of them, yes, they charge more. And so it was Councillor Plummer that talked about a taxi chit system, and as he said on this one occasion, that's an awful lot of taxi chits. In other words, there could be a far less amount of money spent on a taxi chit system that certainly would not see this particular situation unfold. Speaking to North Grenville, because that seems to be the comparator. So certainly the deputy mayor, the CAO, and I had a conversation with the mayor, must be about a year ago, to have a conversation about what they were looking at, how they were going to roll it out, that sort of thing. And what I took away from that particular meeting is they had a transit system for what I would call specialized transit, like a handy bus type of service, that no one was taking it over, it was going to falter and so forth, but they had no taxis, they had no care for, they had no other means of getting people around. So effectively what I'm going to say is they had nothing to lose, because what else were they going to do? I did reach out to the mayor recently and did not receive a response, but I did then reach out to the director of corporate services to be informed, and I did pass this along to Madam Treasurer. I was asking, and they have a very good website that tells you about ridership. It tells you about the amount of cancellation of trips. It's a very interesting website and it's real life. It's what's playing out in North Grenville. But in any event, I wanted to know that in 2024 there was approximately 10,000 riders. We're not talking people. We're talking 10,000 riders or trips. And out of that, what I was informed was about 40% involved someone with some level of disability. And so as we all know, in Pembroke, we have the Pembroke Handy Bus that's been in existence for more than 35 years, running 3 different buses, a number of different people employed. So it begs the question, so then if you're going to implement a transit system, and I understand what the report is saying is that if you're going to implement a transit service, it has to be AODA compliant, fair enough. But if this goes to the transit committee and ultimately the decision rests with council, but if the decision is to charge, as some would suggest, $4.50 a trip or $5 a trip, when the handy bus is charging $7 a trip, I don't know, if I'm a senior and I'm on a fixed income, am I going to say, well, the heck with this, we'll just go with, they're accessible anyways, we're going to go with this. So not only is there the potential to have an effect upon taxi cab businesses, which is private enterprise, but the handy bus system that's been in existence for more than 35,000, I note, and I forgot to mention it, is when I looked at that initial paradigm report, I don't even see where they even engaged Care4 and where Care4 fits into this mechanism or this situation. And I recognize Care4 is funded from different levels of mainly provincial government, but it's yet another transit system that North Grenville did not have. So anyways, certainly like all of us, you think about it, you talk to people, you try to figure out what do I do in terms of the vote. I know that a number of individuals have clearly told me we're struggling, and you're telling me that there's going to be an 8.9% increase, and built into there is transit. What are we doing? I had one person that I would describe as apathetic. They frankly said, I'm already facing an increase because we passed that bylaw to do an interim tax levy, I guess. Perhaps that's why he was saying it. He said, I'm already looking at an increase, so do what you're going to do to me. And so it's almost like an apathy that struck with that particular person. And I don't doubt that we all chat with different individuals, and depending on who you speak to, some individuals, yes, I'm in favor of it and so forth. It just, the individuals I'm talking to are indicating to me, Ron, what is it that your council is looking at? So that's my rationale. As I've alerted Madam Clerk, I will be looking for a recorded vote. Anyways.
Okay, so we're ready for a recorded vote. This is called by Mayor Gervais, so I'll take your vote first, Mayor. Would you like me to reread the recommendation?
No, nay.
Deputy Mayor Brian Abdallah,
Yes.
Councillor Ed Jackno,
Yes.
Councillor Ian Keel,
Yes.
Councillor Pat Lafreniere,
Yes.
Councillor Andrew Plummer is absent, Councillor Troy Purcell.
Yes.
So the vote is carried, 5 to 1.
Thank you. And thank you to our guests for coming tonight to answer questions, and thank you. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Good evening, Mr. Lewis.
Good evening, Your Worship.
I believe you have first up Engineering Services Albert Street Reconstruction Design.
Yes, thank you. The recommendation of this report is that the Operations Committee recommend that Council award the engineering design and contract administration services for Albert Street reconstruction, RFP number P-24-11, to JP2G Consultants, Inc., in the amount of $174,405 plus applicable HST, and that the shortfall be funded from surplus funds from previously completed capital projects as noted in the report. So we'll start with the financials. As part of the 2024 capital budget and to be carried forward into 2025, $130,000 was identified for the Albert Street design. With the net HST, the design works total $177,474.53. That represents a budget shortfall of roughly $47,500. The shortfall can be funded from surplus funds in the Victoria Street ESA project and the Dominion to Draper sanitary sewer projects. The above award includes the future award of contract administration services to JP2G Consultants, Inc., based on the quoted value submitted in their proposal, and that will only be awarded when construction contracts are awarded. So a bit of background, the design work for Albert Street includes between Pembroke Street West and First Responders Way. It is the fourth street to be constructed as part of the downtown core renewal program, and it does include replacing the buried water, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, as well as the existing overhead electrical, telephone, and cable services. Streetscape enhancements incorporating hard and soft landscaping elements, pedestrian lighting, furniture to match the previously completed downtown connectors of Victoria Street, Alexander, and Agnes Street. There were a total of 6 proposals that were received. The proposals were reviewed and evaluated in accordance with predetermined criteria, meeting all the requirements of our procurement policy and our usual standards and procedures. The recommendation was derived by using the highest score based on the average of the evaluators, and it has been determined to offer the best value for the project. The strategic impact is maintaining infrastructure in good condition with no major failures, and the need to ensure capacity requiring this infrastructure renewal project. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions, comments, motions? So I have Councillor Keel and Councillor Purcell.
So recognizing that by far this is not one of the worst streets in Pembroke, why are we doing it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on the surface, not one of the worst streets in the city of Pembroke. The underground infrastructure is far beyond its estimated useful life, causing us serious grief. If I can bring back some of the other downtown connectors, we pulled out wooden storm sewer off of Agnes Street. Water mains nearing 100 years old in the downtown core is a significant issue if infrastructure was to fail in that downtown core. As well, the electrical and burying the electrical and upgrading the electrical is something that we need to do. Electrical failures in the downtown core is significant, especially with the banks down there. So it may not necessarily be the surface that people are seeing that deems this project a high priority, but the underground infrastructure does.
And that is why I think we need to talk about that more, because I think for look, I love our ratepayers, but on the issue of roads, I don't think they appreciate what's underneath the surface layer. And that's why I wanted to ask that question.
Purcell?
So I move that the committee recommend to council award the engineering design and contract administration for the Albert Street reconstruction request proposal to JP2J Consultants for the amount of $174,405 plus the applicable HST.
You, and it's seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Is there any other discussion on it? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a question for Mr. Lewis. Once we get over past the skateboard park and the timber mural, can you just tell us the plan for where the boat used to be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't have a solid plan as of yet. Parks and Recreation is working with the Operations Department. Parks and Rec is working with their active transportation plan. There's a number of things in the works with the Parks and Recreation Department, so we will be working with this design team and the Parks and Recreation Department to come up with, call it a destination point, a trailhead, something that will coordinate with both the waterfront park as well as the Algonquin Trail, and still work with what we plan for the downtown connectors, keeping that look and that feel and the use of the downtown connectors.
Right, because I know you talked about trail, it's going to be a location for some kind of a trailhead to cater to everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Then two other points. I did loop Mr. Lewis in terms of our first waterfront development committee meeting, so he is aware of that meeting and in terms of requiring certain services down there. And the second thing is we've kidded in the past when different projects proceeded that are more water, sewer, and so forth, is that it's not sexy. So we have joked about that in the past, because it's true. It's the public can't see it. Anyways, so having said all of that, call the question. Those in favor? And that is carried. Great, thank you. Next one, Mr. Lewis, Transportation Master Plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. The recommendation that the Operations Committee endorse and recommend to Council to adopt the Transportation Master Plan East-West Traffic 2024. It was completed by Paradigm Transportation Solutions Limited as a guiding document for the Operations Department, defining key projects, subject to development, staffing capabilities, and annual budget approvals. There are no financial implications at this time. Some background: the city, in partnership with the Township of Laurentian Valley, we retained Paradigm to complete a transportation master plan for east-west traffic, to provide important information and recommendations to help guide the official plan policies and development approval decisions, as well as future decisions on transportation infrastructure needs. At the September 17th, 2024 meeting, a presentation was provided by the consulting firm on the recommendations in a draft report, and at that time they also answered questions of council. The Transportation Master Plan assessed the existing transportation network, identified potential improvements to meet current and future needs, considering existing and future growth patterns and development. Pembroke and Laurentian Valley are experiencing rapid growth with ongoing and expected development. This additional growth will increase travel demands on many of the roads, with east-west roads particularly affected, and that's due to a limited number of river crossings. The road network upgrades that improve the operation of existing roads and direct traffic away from Pembroke Street, and we're all quite aware that the Pembroke Street corridor can get quite congested. And this plan can assist in managing future congestion and reduce the growth in traffic on local roads. So the TMP identified and evaluated 10 alternative road network improvements. Those are a combination of new roadways in future development areas and existing roadway improvements. To the plan for the city's future, the TMP also reviewed the existing road network, provided for 28 recommendations to be considered for implementation. That's all over the next 20 years as part of the city's capital projects. These primarily include localized intersection improvements as well as planned works implemented through development projects undertaken by others. Recommendations within the plan include new road connections, existing road upgrades, new roads in the growth areas, and 13 intersection upgrades to optimize performance of the existing road system. Once adopted by council, the operations department will categorize and prioritize the recommendations into the multi-year capital construction forecast, and that'll be for the next 1 to 20 years. This forecast will be dependent on the progress of development, so we're not going to include significant upgrades to our network if development doesn't move forward as we presently project. Also, with staffing capabilities and the annual budget allocations. Key themes and principles introduced in the Transportation Master Plan should also be incorporated into the city's official plans, which represent a guiding land use policy and policy document for the city. So leaning on the strategic plan, the plan aligns with this Transportation Master Plan aligns with the city's commitment to infrastructure renewal, as well as long-term financial planning to support a sustainable transportation practice and a livable community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell.
Thanks, Mr. Lewis, for your presentation. On September the 17th, there was great discussion in regards to Dewville and Matheson. And I still see it in there in terms of opening up Matheson through traffic into a subdivision. When I spoke to Laurentian Valley, they continued to promote that after we communicated that that was not a no-go for council. I can go back, and I know we had majority of council that said we didn't want to see that street blown through. It's still in the plan itself. So for that reason, I will not be supporting it. I'll be requesting a recorded vote.
Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just make a brief comment. Transportation Master Plan is that. It's a plan. And a document today doesn't necessarily mean when we come forward with recommendations for specific projects in the future that those are necessarily going to go through. We are also still working with the Township of Laurentian Valley on the development that is at the end of what is Matheson Drive and bordering up to the Bell Street O'Brien area, Bell, O'Brien, Angus Campbell Drive area. So we're still working out a number of things with Township of Laurentian Valley and that developer on access and so forth, which includes continued discussions regarding Matheson Drive. So I just wanted to make that clear that we're still working through.
Perhaps a briefing note maybe under discussion needs to articulate that a little bit better, but it won't, this briefing note will disappear, so that's the problem, right? And then all of a sudden, it looks like we've agreed to widening that road when there's no place to widen it to. So again, I will not be supportive of this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Freni, and then I have the Deputy Mayor.
Through the chair, I'm pretty sure we gave them the message we were not willing to open up Matheson, and I think it was pretty much unanimous at Pembroke City Council. I would feel better if we could modify this before we support it tonight. So I kind of tend to agree with Councillor Purcell. I understand that this is just, a working document. It's not finalized, but I mean, I would rather make sure all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted before we move forward, making it clear what we are willing to do and what we're not willing to do. So I tend to agree with Councillor Purcell. I know in the past, many moons ago, things were done over a handshake and and that was it. But nowadays, I think we need to really be mindful that we want to make sure that we're not giving misleading information to anybody. I don't want anybody to be able to look at this document saying, well, look it's right there saying you'd open up Matheson. So just my thoughts on Councillor Purcell's concerns. I tend to agree.
The deputy mayor and then Councillor Keel. I was trying to read your body. Yeah, I'm trying to read your body
Yeah,
language.
through the chair. Mr. Lewis, the access to that subdivision behind Angus Campbell Drive, aren't they going to come in at O'Brien?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the main access into the subdivision is at the intersection of Angus Campbell Drive, Bell Street, and O'Brien.
Right.
That's going to be the main access point. That's also looking at the development. That's also the road that takes off and goes everywhere else. That road, that intersection will connect to Robinson Lane eventually through the development. It will also connect, as things are planned now, to Drive-In Road. I'm trying to remember the county road number. I can't off the top of my head, but it will eventually connect there when that development is fully developed. And as well with Dieuville Drive. So Dieuville Drive, there's another subdivision that's in development stages in the city of Pembroke at the intersection of that road and Dieuville Drive. So majority of the traffic is all going to be happening through the upper part of that subdivision and away from Matheson. At present, the discussions regarding Matheson with the developer is at least through the first stages, first phases of the development is there will be no connection to Matheson through that first part. It's all at the upper end.
Yeah, that's why we approved the O'Brien access.
Correct.
Because we didn't want Matheson.
That is correct.
So because Matheson is in the plan, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It would have to come to council for a vote, right?
That's correct. Everything in the plan, moving forward, everything in the plan still has to come to council for approval. We're not going to start working on a project to extend a road or develop a new road without coming to council through the number of stages as we normally would. Before going to design, before hiring a consultant to do engineering design, before going to construction, we're in front of council all along those steps. So the opportunity is there over and over and over again.
So, yeah, I remember that. Could we take that Matheson out of the plan and put a note in there, or what's the legal implications or policy or?
Well, I wouldn't say there's any legal ramifications. I'll have to go back to the consultant to get them to rework the plan. I'll have to go back to the Township of Laurentian Valley and rework the plan with them because this is a joint venture and we've been working with them through the
Okay.
whole thing. So I can definitely take it back to those and see what we can do about taking that portion out of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Keel?
Again, it's a plan, it's a document, the city has lots of them. Can we not in our motion tonight just say that we generally endorse and recommend to council adopt the master plan, and then number two, notwithstanding the general acceptance, that council does not accept the linking of Matheson Drive. Like a motion can have more than one part to it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that would be acceptable. I would take that back to the Township of Laurentian Valley. I would take that back to the consultant. I may go one step further then with that and have a revision attached to the report, to the plan, that speaks to that not being accepted.
Can I move that without repeating it, Victor, or do you want me to?
Yeah. I will need just a little bit of consensus on that and clarification on the wording, please.
So the recommendation that the City of Pembroke, can we insert the word generally? Oh, the City of Pembroke Operations Committee generally endorses and recommends blah, 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 blah. And then part 2 of the motion, notwithstanding the general acceptance of the Transportation Master Plan East-West Traffic 2024, the City of Pembroke does not endorse or recommend the,
If I may, Counselor, we
Yeah.
can't do a negative vote, so it would be the removal of XYZ.
that the City of Pembroke opposes the inclusion of the Matheson Drive connection. Because we can definitely oppose things.
As Madam Clerk is writing that out, is there a seconder for that one? At least we could get that much further down the trail. Okay, so there's a seconder. Yeah, no, I know a lot of people want to speak, and I'm just waiting on Madam Clerk now at this point to make sure she's with us. I think we trust you that you have it. You say you got it, you got it. Okay.
On video, you can always recheck yourself.
Councillor Lafreniere, and I have Councillor Giacono.
Thank you. So I know I mentioned this at some other operations meetings, specifically through the chair to Mr. Lewis. The development that is going to be going on the west side of Elgin Street in the township of Laurentian Valley, that is going to have a huge impact on Elgin Street and Boundary Road. I don't see any plans that Laurentian Valley is going to look for another route to Boundary, maybe over the old track or anything like that. Was there any discussions on what can be done to alleviate that extra pressure that's going to be at the corner of Elgin and Boundary? I didn't see anything in there. And I know it's already a heavily Boundary Road, let's face it, from Bennett to Brewham, to the cemetery is a speedway. So I didn't see anything in there to take into fact the increased housing that is going to be on the west side of Elgin Street. Like if it's a master plan looking into the future, I know that they've already started their work over there. So to me, it's the near future. So I don't know why. I know it's Laurentian Valley, but it was a partnership. So I'm surprised nothing was in this about that. Can you
Lewis?
comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, a number of things are in play. There's the Gulfview subdivision that's in play. There's the subdivision you're referring to off of Elgin Street that's in play. In both of those development documents, and in working, the city working with both the township on the Elgin Street one and the developers, there's a number of things written into those development agreements that deal with whether there should be signals on Boundary Road, intersection improvements, and so forth. We provided all of that information to the consultant when they looked at the Transportation Master Plan. So they're not going to write into the Transportation Master Plan to dual or mirror something that's already in another planning document. So just because Elgin and Boundary Road was not addressed specifically in the Transportation Master Plan doesn't mean that we're not addressing it. Along with Boundary and International Drive. In the Transportation Master Plan does have Boundary and Christie Street. There's Boundary and, again, the county road, which I believe it's County Road 51 or 58, which is Brewham Avenue. It's in the Transportation Master Plan. So all of these plans together are going to address Boundary Road.
Thank you. And just further, if you could bring a report to council, possibly in your spare time, Brian, in between. No, I'm just kidding. I know you don't have a lot, but if there could come a report come forward, maybe in the next 12 months even. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jacquinot.
Your worship, I'm not as skilled as some of you folks with wordsmithing and stuff, and I almost have an idea to motion this, to table a motion to allow staff to go back, talk to the consultant, confer with Laurentian Valley, because are we just going to open up another bunch of little caveats where, you know, we'll be looking at different phrases and sentences? I mean, the consultant's already been hired. I would motion to table it till we have more information coming back from our operations people and the consultant.
Motion to table. Is there a seconder for the motion? Seeing none. So no discussion on the motion, but we don't even have a seconder, so it's not going very much
Okay.
further.
Thank you.
Okay, so that didn't happen, and so we have a motion on the floor. Does anyone else have any final comments before we call the question in terms of the motion of Councillor Keel? Councillor Keel.
So in terms, like, again, identifying that it's a plan, is there, and I might have missed it because I'm not going to lie, this was a very long document and I kind of just skimmed through it. But like, what is the expected timeline to do this? And like, are we currently in a position to budget to actually get it done? I guess what I'm asking is this a plan we can actually accomplish? And I say that having just come back from Roma and being scared to death about the future of every municipality in Ontario going bankrupt. So I will put a caveat that I'm a little highly sensitive after the last couple days at Roma, but that's my question is this something we can actually do? Because I appreciate the importance of it. There's, you know, over many years, I'm sure the city has had planners and engineers and they had ideas and then somebody moved on and then there were different ideas and so certainly I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's a few. I know there's some aspects of Pembroke where you're just like, how did this ever happen? It probably shouldn't have. So I love the idea that we've taken a very broad and very modern overview of the entire city to try and find efficiencies for our residents. I just want to know if we think we can actually do what we're talking about.
So through you, Mr. Chair, a number of things, Councillor, that I'll try and address in that. One, not all of the recommendations or all the works that are included in the plan is going to be on the backs of City of Pembroke taxpayers. That's number one. Several of the recommendations are included for road network improvements or upgrades through developments. That's the developer. So if there's a new road going in a development that's going to connect Bell Street to Robinson Lane, that is through the development, would be constructed and paid for by the development. So although they're included in the plan, they're not necessarily going to be all ours to cost. Additionally, right now, this is a 1 to 20 year plan. That's the forecast. It was based on what we believe at present is the forecast of those developments. If the developments don't move ahead as quickly as we're projecting at this point, then the work also doesn't need to move ahead as quickly as we're projecting. So we have a sense that along with the Township of Laurentian Valley, this is a plan for both the Township of Laurentian Valley and the City of Pembroke. So again, not everything is on the backs of the city taxpayers. Along with Township of Laurentian Valley, along with the developers and trying to project and forecast into the future, I see this as being a reasonable plan, a doable plan, with all those assumptions taken into account.
So we have a motion on the floor. Seeing no other discussion, call the question. Those in favor? 2, 3, 4. It's carried. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Next on the agenda is Integrity Commissioner appointment. Madam Clerk.
Good evening. So before you today is a report for the appointment of an integrity commissioner. The recommendation on the report is that the Operations Committee endorse and recommend to Council the appointment of Bench Municipal Law and Governance as integrity commissioner and closed meeting investigator for the City of Pembroke. Furthermore, that the Operation Committee endorse and recommend to Council that staff be directed to enter into negotiations with Bench Municipal Governance. So a little bit of background, as presented in a report in October, the Bill 68 requires municipalities to appoint an integrity commissioner and closed meeting investigator as part, and to enforce a code of conduct to oversee the ethical behavior for council members and local boards. This role also includes, again, investigating closed meeting complaints should they be provided, and providing advice and offering educational resources related to ethics and conflict of interest matters. So as directed, staff went out through an RFP process for services of an integrity commissioner. And in closing, there were 5 proponents that submitted proposals, and an evaluation panel consisting of the CAO and myself, the clerk, reviewed them based on a number of detailed criteria: experience and qualifications, past performance, costs, fees, and overall impression. After a thorough review, Bench Municipal was scored the highest and across all criteria is recommended for the position. Their proposal offers the best value with a service structure that is both effective and cost efficient. Financial consideration. So the cost as outlined in the RFP proposal submitted will be on an as-needed basis at an hourly rate of $300 per hour or $1,500 per day, up to 7 hours, plus taxes, whatever is less for the day rate versus the hour rate. There is no annual retainer fee, and funds for this service are available in the council's legal operating budget, with additional funds available from the general legal operating budget if required. So upon proceeding this evening, staff will work with Bench Municipal to draft a formal agreement for their services, which will be brought to council by law via the meeting in February. And the agreement will include a review of the current council code of conduct and provide training for both council and staff on ethics and closed meeting procedures. I'm happy to answer any questions, should there be some.
Mr. Keel?
Do we know what prior experience this person has?
Yes, there is prior experience from a number of municipalities that the references were checked, Chatham, Kent being one. And off the top of my head, I don't have the proposal, but there were 3 municipalities that I spoke to, and all provided glowing recommendations from the training perspective, answering questions, and timeliness of response. And the investigator is a lawyer and has experience across the board.
Well, we won't hold that against her. Did she provide in her proposal any insight into how she handles complaints, given that, well, I guess we were in public session. Part of the reason I didn't support the last one was because of his process. So did she go through what her process is?
Yes, so through you, Chair, great question. In the process, it details a process of, first and foremost, doing not investigations first, but contacting, trying to, for lack of a better term, chat with all the parties and see if an investigation is required. She has extensive reporting experience with a lot of, and not to get too long-winded, but there's a lot of really contentious items that she had to report on. She reported on them and explained the process in trying to come to an understanding first, and investigation second.
You should feel free to get long-winded, because I'm taking this appointment very seriously, to the point where I'm not sure that I don't want us to interview her before we appoint her.
We're legislated to have one, as everyone knows.
Oh, I agree we're
yeah.
legislated to have one, but we didn't like the last one. So I just want to make sure that we're not going to get into a situation where once again we have, well, the problem that I explained earlier, the very first complaint that I got and that Troy got, he literally gave us a link to a video and said, "This has been complained against you." There was no Like, we didn't receive the written report from the complainant. Like, literally, it was a letter from him saying, watch this video, there's a complaint against you. He didn't even say what section of the code that we violated. That was the very first round with him. So, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're getting someone, I don't want to say let's hire an integrity commissioner that's never going to find against us. I mean, there's been some cases in Ontario of some pretty exceptionally bad behavior. I mean, Shirley in Ottawa, I mean, that was a sexual harassment complaint. Like, there have been some very serious breaches of codes and breaches of character. But at the same time, it is a regulatory process. There are findings against us. There is a potential for us to, to lose part of your honorarium. Like, there could be a financial request. So, like, I just want to make sure that it's a fair process, because that is not how I would describe our last go around. So, I don't know. I'm going to stop talking for now, but like, this is a pretty serious appointment. Like, we're not hiring somebody that we can just fire in 3 months if we don't like, we don't put them on probation or something. Like, this is a pretty serious appointment. So that's my concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair points. So council directed staff to go out. We followed an appropriate RFP process. It is very detailed. We followed it, and this is the front runner, so hence the recommendation. Now, a part of the caveat to the RFP was working with council to develop a code of conduct. As of now, each council has their own unique code of conduct that obviously has to hit very important legislative benchmarks. So there's provisions for council to outline structure there. Also, the agreement will come back via bylaw. So if you want to try it out for a year, you try it out for a year. The standard term is about 3 years. So it's all up to committee and council on those types of points in the agreement. We did follow the RFP process, so I would recommend we adhere to that. So I'll leave you with those thoughts.
Councillor Purcell?
I know where Councillor Keel is coming from. I think what gives me a little bit of reassurance is that we'll be helping to draft the code of conduct based on the municipal act requirements, making sure that's a bare minimum, right? And then we can set the expectations moving forward with the integrity commissioner in terms of enforcement. Because I think what we were getting at, and I think what Councillor Keel was getting at, a lot was left to interpretation. My interpretation for maybe what would be considered disrespectful would be somebody else may not consider that disrespectful, right? So, I mean, some of these things we need to kind of hash out as a group. So I think that's some good dialogue that will happen. I see that she's the city solicitor for Mississauga for 18 years. So I'm sure she's seen it all. Is her last name Bench? Is that the Bench legal? Is that her
Correct.
last name? It just says Mary Ellen, so.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Okay, so, yeah, so I think the sooner that we kind of tackle the code of conduct with her through an exercise, I think it'll be greatly appreciated. And then we could have those dialogue and feel comfortable with her moving forward. Because, again, it's an interpretation component, and we want to make sure that it's interpreted, based on a set of principles, guidance, something. But Councillor Keel is right. Our last integrity commissioner, in fact, didn't even meet his contractual requirements. Where was the last report that we received in terms of all the integrity issues that was supposed to come out annually? We still never received anything like that. I guess he's done. So I guess we're not seeing that. So there's these things as well, right? So, this is 2 years. I've been in this position, never ever saw one of those. So just want to make sure that these expectations are set correctly with our new integrity commissioner, and that, that it's not just left to a whim in terms of how she's going to address these concerns. I was considered disrespectful. Ian was considered to be disrespectful. I had pay first recommendation was, hey, 14 days, hit him with 14 days pay suspension. He never got that. You know, there's some inconsistencies right there. How do you come up with the decisions? How do you come up with the recommendations? And I think that's what we need to flush out.
And thank you through you, Chair. Another caveat to the RFP, and based on conversations, I'd like to see a lot more consistent training, like once a quarter, on timely relevant matters, Q&A from the Integrity Commissioner. So that's been written into the RFP as well. And we can work together to outline a structure that suits everyone, staff and council alike, because it is very important, and it's a priority for myself as the clerk to make it the best program that it can be, and work with the Integrity Commissioner and Council and the public to marry up all of these legislative requirements, communication, perhaps gaps in the past, and make it a really strong point moving forward.
Deputy Mayor?
Before I make a motion, Madam Clerk, can it be for 1 year with an extension, or does it have to be 3 years?
So committee council can direct staff to have that in the negotiations. It could be 1 year with a possible extension up to 3 years, whatever council committee
Okay,
sees fit.
so I'll make that motion. 1 year with a possible extension up to 3.
Okay, Councillor, so it's being seconded by Councillor Keel. Councillor Jacquino?
Your worship, I know that there was a large number of complaints to the Integrity Commissioner right across the province. It just wasn't, Renfrew County, whatever, or Ottawa. And I believe that the provincial government was supposed to come up with some firmer guidelines for the the job that the Integrity Commissioner does, and outline what the actual personified code of behavior would be for a council. Has that come forward yet, or are we still waiting?
We are still waiting on anything concrete, but it is making its rounds. Until then, we'll have to have something in place until there's a uniform
Thank you.
code.
Lafreniere?
Yes, thank you. The province comes up with these ideas and we have to implement and enforce them. I guess my biggest pet peeve with this whole process is that we are supposed to be judge and jury of our peers once we get these reports, which isn't fair. We have to work with these individuals, and whether or not we feel that they're guilty, or what it shouldn't be on our shoulders. We are a team. We need to work together. And even if we think someone did do something wrong, I don't think we should be the one that determines that. So I just think the province is like putting this on our lap. I just want to also say that I think our code of conduct is pretty good. It's very similar to some of the rules our own staff have to follow, not embarrassing people in public, being respectful, things of that nature. But as clear as we can be to people sitting around that table, it's not an easy place to be. I know, I've spent my years here. As clear as we can be about what is not acceptable behavior at the table. I think that as clear as we can get would be great. But I know that I attended some training last year and not 100% of the counselors were there. So some of us got the information and others didn't. So I really wish those things would be compulsory for council members, because if we're supposed to be all on the same plate, we should be all receiving the same information. And that's all I want to say. So I'm just looking at staff and the mayor to say this should be compulsory. If these sessions are going to be scheduled, it should be given like notice to the councillors so they don't schedule vacations and whatnot, because this is important stuff. And no one wants to be able to say, well, I didn't know that. I didn't, go to the session. So anyway, that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do understand what you're saying, that it should be compulsory, but all meetings in terms of council is told about, we don't have willy-nilly meetings and don't tell certain people. I don't think you're suggesting that, but I'm just saying, in the past, council was always informed of the education sessions.
But they should be compulsory.
I understand
in my
that part.
opinion.
Yes, no, I understand that part. I just want to ensure that whether it's the public or whoever understands that all of council is always told about when there are meetings. Anyways, Councillor Keel, and then perhaps we can move forward.
So yeah, I think the 1 year appointment will certainly address concerns because we will get to meet with her and hopefully have further education sessions that hopefully everybody can attend. I will slightly disagree with Councillor Lafreniere in saying that the current code of conduct is good. I think it's a horrible document. It is vague. It is. It has at least one illegal section in it I think our prior integrity commissioner drafted the code of conduct, and in it there's an illegal section because it says that he can oppose a reprimand and or a monetary thing, which he cannot, and he admitted that to me. The municipal act says that you can only do one or the other. He was made aware of that illegal clause at the beginning of the last term, and yet did nothing to do anything with it. And as Councillor Purcell pointed out, the prior contract said that he was supposed to report to council annually, and we never got an annual report. Anyway, all of that is to say that I certainly look forward to drafting a new code of conduct, and why I actually wanted to speak was to say that Councillor Jacquinot is entirely correct. The amount of talk at Roma about these integrity commissioners and the problems that are being caused. I got to speak with one couple, and I literally mean a couple. There's a husband and wife team on one city council. I thought the same thing, Councillor Jacquinot. And basically, at the end of the day, there's a couple individuals that just keep, I'm going to say, weaponizing the process and just keep filing complaints, all of which have been they have been found to be unfounded, but one or both of them at the same time have had to go through this process 5 times. Now, Troy's been through it once. I've been through it a couple, I'll call it 1.5. The mayor, I think, actually has the most at the moment. It's time consuming. It weighs on you. So I can also tell you that, there's another municipality here in Renfrew County where they're also dealing with one individual who seems to have weaponized the process. And to my knowledge, from talking with the CAO of that municipality, I also believe all of his have been found to be unfounded. So we are dealing with a different public than when I think this stuff came out. I think post Donald Trump in the 2016 to 2020 time, I think people have a lot less respect for politics, but partly that was because there's certain politicians that have a lot less respect for the system. So I do believe that there's weaponizing of these. I don't know if we've seen it with FOI requests, but I know other municipalities feel that the FOI request process has been weaponized by specific individuals. So I believe at the moment, I think there are 2 bills before the legislature, and I believe one is to implement a province-wide code of conduct, which I'm going to tell you right now, sitting here, I don't actually agree with. I think we should be in control of our codes of conduct, and when you give something to the province, that means you no longer have any ability to do anything. Now, if they implement something we like, that's fine, but if they implement a process or something that we don't like, there's nothing we can do about it. And when I posed that to a lot of people at Rome over the last couple days, I can tell you right now, quite a few of them paused and kind of went, well, I never thought of that. Because whenever somebody would say, our code of conduct is being used in this way, I'm like, well, why don't you change your code of conduct? Because at the moment, the Municipal Act basically says, I think there's 5 regulated heads that have to be in your code of conduct. A lot of the stuff in our code of conduct is not mandated by those 5 heads. We've gone further than what the Municipal Act says has to be in the code of conduct. So for some of them, I just said, well, why didn't you just amend your code if you have an integrity commissioner that's, focusing on something that doesn't need to be focused on? You have that power right now. The second bill before the legislature is some mandatory, I believe it's mandatory training for integrity commissioners, so that hopefully they can get the integrity commissioners across the province sort of closer to the same page. But of course, those two bills are before the legislature, and it would be my expectation that those two bills are about to die in the very, very near future. And, you know, whether it's the same government or a new government that comes in a few weeks or a couple months, you know, again, all these bills need to be reintroduced in that. So I think the point Madam Clerk was getting at was, you know, we're going to be dealing with this as the current situation for some time. Probably for sure at least half a year, if not longer.
Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. Everyone clear? Can I call the question? Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. A motion to adjourn, moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Keel. Those in favor? We are adjourned to operations. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this council meeting to order for January 21st. I would ask that everyone please take an opportunity to stand for an opening prayer or reflection. Before opening this meeting of council, I would ask those who wish, each in your own way, silently join in a prayer of guidance over these proceedings. Thank you. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in relation to the items on this council agenda? Seeing none. Series of minutes this evening. First is a special meeting of council, January 7th, 2025. I'd entertain a motion for its approval. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Frenier. Those in favor? That is carried. Next is a regular meeting of council, same night, January 7th, 2025. Moved by Councillor Keel, seconded by Councillor Frenier. Those in favor? That's carried. Then we have adoptions of minutes. We have Operations Committee, December 17th, 2024, as circulated, moved by Councillor Keel, seconded by Councillor Giacono. Those in favor? That's carried. Last but not least, we have adoptions of, or receiving, minutes. Pembroke Public Library, December 12th, 2024, moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Those in favor? And that is carried. No delegations this evening, so there's nothing arising out of that. So moving on to Operations Committee, staff and committee reports. Councillor Keel.
Your Worship, your Operations Committee of Council begs to report and recommend from its meeting held this evening as follows. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Purcell, that the City of Pembroke Council generally adopts the Transportation Master Plan East-West Traffic 2024, completed by Paradigm Consulting, as a guiding document for the Operations Department by defining key projects subject to development, staffing capabilities, and annual budget approvals, and that notwithstanding the general acceptance of the Transportation Master Plan East-West Traffic 2024, the City of Pembroke Council opposes the inclusion of the Matheson Drive connection.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Victoria.
Operations Committee of Council begs to report and recommend from the meeting held earlier, moved by Councillor Keel, seconded by Councillor Purcell, that the City of Pembroke Council generally adopt the Transportation Master Plan East-West Traffic 2024, completed by Paradigm Consulting, as a guiding document for the Operations Department by defining key projects subject to the development, staffing capabilities, and annual budget approvals, notwithstanding the general acceptance of the Transportation Master Plan East-West Traffic 2024. The City of Pembroke Council opposes inclusion of Matheson Drive connection. Councillor Keel, did you wish to speak to it, or?
Your Worship, this was literally discussed in the extensively in the last committee right before this council meeting, and I think that can stand for itself.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Proclamations. By virtue of the power vested in me, I do hereby declare February 2nd through the 8th to be White Cane Week in the City of Pembroke. Whereas the first full week of February is celebrated as White Cane Week in Canada to promote the initiative of the Canadian Council of the Blind, and whereas the Pembroke White Cane Club, in association with the Canadian Council of the Blind, aims to provide education and to raise awareness about vision loss and remind all Canadians that the traditional white cane is a symbol of independence, not dependence, and a lack of sight is not a lack of vision. And whereas White Cane Week has evolved to reflect the changing situation of the blind community, and it has begun to emphasize the equal capabilities and talents of people who are blind and partially sighted, and their significant contributions to the community and to the workplace. And whereas with the province's aging population, all Ontarians need to be better informed about the effect of vision loss and work towards creating a more supportive, inclusive community. This proclamation pertains to the importance of White Cane Week to raise public awareness of the challenges facing Canadians living with vision loss within their communities. The week's focus is on demonstrating the abilities, not disabilities, of people living with vision loss. So therefore, be it resolved that I, Ron Gerva, Mayor of the City of Pembroke, do hereby proclaim the week of February 2nd through to the 8th, 2025 as White Cane Week in the City of Pembroke. There's no bylaws this evening. Motions 2025-0115. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Keel, whereas the Corporation City of Pembroke supports and requests the establishment of an Ontario Rural Road Safety Program, and whereas official statistics from the Government of Ontario confirm that the rural roads are inherently more dangerous than other roads, and whereas despite only having 17% of the population, 55% of the road fatalities occur on rural roads. And whereas rural, northern, and remote municipalities are fiscally strained by maintaining extensive road networks on smaller tax bases, and whereas preventing crashes reduces the burden on Ontario's already strained rural healthcare system, and whereas roadway collisions and associated lawsuits are significantly factors in runaway municipal insurance premiums, preventing crashes can be a significant impact in improving municipal risk profiles. Therefore, be resolved that the City of Pembroke requests that the Government of Ontario take action to implement a rural road safety program that Good Roads has committed to lead. It will allow Ontario's rural municipalities to make the critical investments needed to reduce the high number of people being killed and seriously injured on Ontario's rural roads, and further, that a copy of the resolution be forwarded to Premier Doug Ford, Honourable Premad Sakura, Minister of Transportation, Honourable King Sura, Minister of Infrastructure, Honourable Rob Flack, Minister of Agriculture, Honourable Lisa Thompson, Minister of Rural Affairs, Honourable Trevor Jones, Associate Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Response, and Honourable Sylvia Jones, Minister of Health and Good Roads. And further, that the resolution be circulated to all municipalities in Ontario, requesting their support. Thank you.
With the indulgence of council, if you could waive rereading. Councillor Purcell. Mike again. We're having a night here. Did you wish to speak to the resolution?
Certainly, I'll give a summary of the resolution. The resolution before you calls for the Government of Ontario to implement a rural road safety program to address the disproportionate number of fatalities on rural roads. Despite representing only 17% of the population, rural areas account for 55% of road deaths. This program, led by Good Roads, would help our municipality and others make the necessary safety improvements, reduce the burden on our healthcare system, and ease the financial strain caused by road collisions and rising insurance costs. Your support for the resolution is a step forward to enhancing road safety in rural Ontario. Thank you.
No, thank you. So call the question. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. There's no correspondence this evening. Moving to Mayor's report. Wish to bring forward my Mayor's report at this time. In respect to invitations, appearances, and other matters, on January 8th, the CAO, the Madam Treasurer, the Director Sorio, as well as Paul McLean, attended the Pembroke Kiwanis Club of Pembroke to have a ribbon cutting of the new lift, making the second floor of the facility at the Kiwanis Club building accessible. The club presented us with a check for $50,000 representing the Kiwanis Club of Pembroke's share for that project. Clearly a great partnership with this organization. January 11th, I was invited to a ceremonial puck drop for the Valley Warriors playing the Electric City hockey team from Peterborough. Special thanks to Jerry Novak, Stacey Graveline, Coach Brett Weckworth, and the countless volunteers and parents for the fantastic job of providing a venue for individuals to play hockey that might otherwise not have the opportunity to play. And so certainly from the bottom of my heart, I certainly want to say job well done to all. In terms of updating this council with reports from other committees that I sit upon, first wanted to bring forward in terms of the Police Services Board. It was another successful year with many new beginnings. The provincial government's new legislation, Community Safety and Policing Act 2019, became law on April 1st, 2024. This new piece of legislation is substantially different than the former piece of legislation that was certainly needing a change. One of the many requirements was board training. I'm pleased to say that all board members have undertaken the legislative training that will serve us well as we carry out our duties. I've said it before that the Solicitor General's office ought to make the training available to all members of council. It would be very helpful, in my opinion, on topics such as diversity, human rights, multiculturalism, and the rights of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. With the new legislation, the OPP have changed the reporting to the board, and the new reports are substantially different from the former reports. The board has addressed a number of inquiries provided by council where appropriate. The inspector has been provided, did provide his annual report and has been advised of council's wish for him to attend in the future, and I believe a date has been worked out. The board has and continues to advance various programs within its mandate, such as assisting with the property identification program, Lock It or Lose It program, while assisting others, such as the Community Watch program that the Deputy Mayor sits upon. The board assisted with and provided guidance to the city staff regarding topics such as camera usage and other such topics. The PSB will and continue to achieve its mandate to ensuring adequate and effective policing. The second report, and I will give it to staff so that it can go to those members of council that wish to see the full report from the manager of the Pembroke Handy Bus. In 2024 marked 35 years in service, providing professional, reliable service to seniors and those with disabilities, both physical and intellectual. As I mentioned earlier this evening, there's 3 vehicles in the fleet traveling more than 44,000 kilometers last year. Total number of trips last year was 7,378. With out of that, there was a total of 121 trips in Laurentian Valley for individuals in wheelchairs, and ambulatory was 748. The transportation is truly door-to-door service for doctor's appointments, shopping, banking, part-time jobs, you name it. It's not just restricted to medical appointments. There's 3 full-time staff, 2 part-time staff. The handy bus is also has emergency management protocols with Miramichi, Marion Hill, Riverview Heights, and Supples Landing in those situations. And the manager's on call 24 hours, 365 due to a paging service. And so that's the 2 reports that I'm bringing forward at this time so as to enable council to know what's going on those 2 different boards. As always, stay safe and be kind to one another. Notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. Councillor updates. I have the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to give an update on, we attended Roma the last few days, Councillor Keel and I and the CEO, and we attended various delegations, the Minister of Colleges, Universities, Councillor Keel will probably be talking about that, the Finance Ministry, the Emergency Preparedness and Response, the Treasury Board Secretariat, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and then the Ministry of Infrastructure. And we discussed various issues like OSIF funding that we receive, and getting funding for things like homelessness and housing, the warming center, the $100,000 that we spend on top of the contribution that we give to the county. And I just want to comment on the partnerships are so important now. We sat in on some, we teamed up with Whitewater Region in the county, and it's so important. We were discussing how important it is to have these partnerships and work together, especially when you want to lower costs, improve services, because we really are one big community, the county of Renfrew. I said at the last budget meeting that I would go to Roma, and we would go to Roma and speak to the Ministry of Finance and tell them that, you know, we can't keep going down this path of 7.9% last year, potential 8.9 this year. And in talking to other communities, everyone's in the same boat, you know. And so I approached the Minister of Finance after Premier Ford spoke in the corridor, and I asked him, is Cabinet planning to sit down with AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and work on the fiscal review task force that the warden has been working on with his group? And the answer was, we increased OSIF funding, that's funding for infrastructure, by $100 million. and we're always engaged with AMO. So the answer he gave me was basically not right now. The OSIP funding, we appreciate the increase, but there's 444 municipalities in Ontario. And I did tell him that, something has to change. We can't keep going down this road. And we gave the same message when we met with the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Finance. And he basically said that they're looking at different options for property tax. That's all we were told. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we did approach him directly. And AMO will continue to work to get that message through, because something has to change. We can't keep doing the same thing. The province announced more funding for the Rural Economic Development Strategy. Minister Lisa Thompson with 10 million annual funding, and they're going to top it up to 20. And that funding goes towards rural communities. The goals of that are to create safe and strong communities, business development, attraction, and growing the rural workforce. And King Surma, the Minister of Infrastructure, announced they're opening applications for $175 million health and safety water stream. And they've also completed evaluating applications for the $400 million housing enabling core services stream. We ran into our friend John Yakubuski. We had a nice chat with him. And I just want to say that we're going to miss John. He's been an exceptional representative. He can work beyond political lines. He's done a lot of work for all of his riding. In Pembroke, he helped with the VTAC and other projects. I know when you meet with him, he's always approachable. So we want to thank John. We had a good chat with him at Roma, and we're going to miss him. Hard boots to fill, as we call him, Big John. So we want to thank him. And that's basically the update from the Roma.
Thank you. Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will start with some information on Festival Hall. On January 10th, we did have a first volunteer meet and greet. I would say that there was a couple dozen volunteers at the meet and greet, ready to continue on with our new Festival Hall director, and very excited about what's going on. I'm going to also remind everybody that Descendants, the first production of the year, Descendants the Musical by Streetlight Theatre, dates are January 31st, February 1st, February 2nd, February 7th, and February 8th. Tickets are moving fast for this one, especially as we get closer to it. And then I will also mention that, again, there is a new Festival Hall website. So it is now www.festivalhall, spelled out in full, .ca. So if you're going to the Fest Hall website, that is no longer going to be helpful to you. So I certainly encourage everyone to continue to support the arts and support Festival Hall. With respect to Roma, the deputy mayor sort of said everything that needs to be said about the fact that this was my first municipal conference, and it's basically 2,000 people asking the government for more money. I'm going to focus more on the two delegations that I requested, and then I do plan with Mr. Unruh to do more of a written report to all of council to get into some of the details that I don't think anybody wants to hear from me standing here tonight. So I did request a delegation concerning the recruitment and retention of skilled and professional trades. So I know a lot of us know that the province has a conversation about getting doctors and nurses into rural communities. My message, which we got a delegation with the Minister of Colleges and Universities, was that unfortunately it is larger than just doctors and nurses. It's optometrists, it's veterinarians. To be quite frank, as your worship knows, we in fact have a shortage of lawyers in certain sectors of the law. It's the skilled trades, it's some of our waste management and other professional municipal trades. So the message was delivered that with the greatest of respect, we do have a larger problem than what is currently being talked about in the public. and that we could all really use some help and some identification of that from the province. Minister Quinn himself from Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry. So essentially, he's basically got a riding that's us on the other side of Ottawa. So we have Pembroke as a hub and then a rural riding. He has Cornwall as a hub and then a rural riding. So I can tell your worship, he was very receptive and very engaged into exactly the same issues that we are seeing here. He's seeing them in his riding, and certainly I know he's going to take some of that information back to his people. The second delegation that I requested was to get, and this follows a motion that was brought before this council, which was to get new and better tools for municipalities to deal with drug houses. And I know your worship, as chair of the Police Services Board, will want to hear the results of this one. So we met with Minister Kersner, the Solicitor General, and this was a particularly engaging delegation. I felt that the Solicitor General clearly had pre-read our brief. He was very engaged with his questioning. He was certainly interested in hearing that it's not necessarily a police issue, and I don't believe it is a police issue. I think your worship attended a community safety meeting where the police told the members of the public that they know where the drug houses are, they know where the dealers are, but just because they know, they can't necessarily move. They have to have underlying grounds to arrest, and sometimes even when they do arrest, the same people are back in the house before the end of the day. So it was made clear to the Solicitor General that we were not approaching this as a policing issue. We were approaching this as to the municipality needing better nuisance tools and things like that to deal with these houses, because at the moment we're basically nibbling around the edges with, we're using the Property Standards Bylaw, we're using the Fire Prevention Act, we're using the Building Code Act, but obviously none of those are focused on the central problem. So he did provide us with actually a couple of ideas that we might be able to implement using current legislation, and he made me promise him that I would get back to him and his team with how that goes for us. So again, your worship, I felt that was also a very engaging delegation, and I'll leave it at that because those were my two favorite ones, and yeah, I'll leave it at that for a Roma update, but I will provide a larger written update to members of council.
Councillor Purcell?
Thank you, council. Just allow me to sit here at my computer. It's a PowerPoint presentation. On January the 16th, I attended the Renfrew County and District Drug Strategy Steering Committee meeting, and I thought some of the information exchange was very important. As you're well aware, last year in 2023, I guess, sorry, I want to make sure I got that right. Wrong one. In 2023, the total suspected drug toxicity deaths were reported as 41 across Renfrew County. That was in 2023. Last year, the total was 27 individuals that were impacted through suspect drug toxicity deaths. So that represents a 34% decrease compared to 2023. So I just wanted to let people know that. In regards to opioid-related emergency department visits by Renfrew County District residents, in 2023 there was a total of 69. But in 2024, there was a total of 74, which is an 9% increase over 2023. But the good news is that there's a decreasing trend that was seen as 2024 progressed. So Q1, where there was 36, in Q2 of 2024 it was 28, in Q3 13, and in Q4 4. So we're starting to see half the amount of opioid department visits, opioid-related department visits at hospitals. We did review the prevention and treatment pillar. It was the draft reports that were provided to the steering committee, and the outstanding two pillars in terms of harm reduction and community safety are still outstanding. there were some interesting stats in regards to the postal codes in which we're seeing the drug toxicity deaths. And this is again for 2024. So typically the two areas are the K8A and the KOJ, Barry's Bay. So K8A with 12, Pembroke, Barry's Bay 8, and then the others represent the remaining numbers. Out of the 27 deaths last year, 22 were male and 5 female. And the drug deaths by age group range from 30 to 50 is the bulk ages, which represents the most number of deaths. About half the deaths occur with that age group. So very sad statistics. You know, even just see one death on there, it's one death too many. In terms of opiate and naloxone distribution, we've increased doses with 14 different partners right now, and we went from 2,796 doses to 4,452 being utilized in 2024. And I think that's about all the information that I received thus far. Just in terms of a verbal report in regards to the operations of the warming center, I've heard that it's working very well and that individuals are utilizing the warming center. I haven't received the official report in terms of the numbers as of yet, but once I do, I'll provide that to council. But I know that I've received feedback from individuals that operate the OATC, and they stated that it's a valued tool, and people are actually attending the treatments as well because of that close connection, having, you know, the warming center in the back of the facility, and they've been managed to actually to attend some treatment. So there's some good things that are happening there. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Jacquinot?
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I would like to congratulate Councillor Purcell and Councillor Lafernier for the wonderful work they've done on the Mesa Group, the interactions. I had the opportunity when I attended the county, Renfrew County Housing Authority meeting, and also the social services meeting to have a chat afterwards with a person that I hold in the highest regard, and that's Mike Nolan, who heads up the paramedics within our area. We had an off-the-cuff discussion after the meeting. Councillor Fernie, I know, started at 9 o'clock, and mine ended at 4. So people say, well, you guys don't really do a lot to make your $8.32 an hour. However, we had a wonderful chat, and we discussed the process and some of the statistics that you'd mentioned tonight. He sort of mentioned, and I said, man, that's a big improvement, and that says something to the program and to the people that are in the program working with the individuals. And he mentioned to me that there was one individual that, I mean, after a while you get to know them by name. Joe, Billy, Bobby, whatever. And I think when you have that interaction with people that are doing okay, have a good standard of living, I think they're sort of setting a shining light upon these people who are at the bottom of the well. They're looking up to see the light. And the light they see are guys like Mike Nolan, who has done 4 or 5 CPR procedures on a couple of people during a week, you know, to bring them back to life. I mean, that is such a noble calling. And I know it plays on them physically and mentally. And anybody says, well, I love my job. But, you know, when you're dealing with people that are really reaching out to you and dealing with people that expire in your arms, that's got to be a pretty difficult thing to, you know, to hang on to. So I truly, truly admire that group. And as well as I said, and all the members of council here, but particularly this guy across the table from me. We don't always get along, but I know that his heart's in the right place. And, you know, he works so diligently with that group. And that is what has made it a success story. And at the social services meeting, we're talking about, homelessness and the grind, et cetera. I've recommended that they ask for the $200,000 back that we as a council had contributed that wasn't really slated in our budget, as well as to consider the outlying areas as well that came up with money to help these people that were in need. There's a $55 million rebate or a program of some sort that's coming from the province of Ontario that will recognize those communities that are dissolving or helping to dissolve these encampments. And this Mesa group way ahead of the curve. It's been done. And now we're talking about, people in the warming center adapting to that. They know they have a place to go. Can you imagine not having a place to go at night? Nowhere to go but maybe a snowbank or in behind some building or an alleyway or in one of the doorways in the downtown. Not doable. We're not that type of society. And because of these groups, things are progressing. And I had the greatest talk with him about this chap who's now living on his own in an apartment. He's found himself, but it wouldn't have been because we don't have, we have people like Mike Nolan, and we've got people that care. So on another note, Your Worship, in the Renfrew County Housing Authority, there's some plans to deconstruct some buildings that have been around for a long time. People are saying, well, we should fix them and repair them. But from the ongoing information that we have received, it takes a lot more money just to fix them up sometimes if they're 40, 50, 60 years old, rather than tearing them down and building new. So there is a plan in place that council should be aware of, and I'll update you with more information when I have it. But kudos to you guys, Councillor Fernier.
Councillor Frenier? We can't hear you.
I'll find it. There it is.
We can hear you.
All right, yeah. So, well, thank you, Councillor Jacquinot, for recognizing the work that Troy and I have been doing in the community. I just want to give you a few highlights of the MESA program that came through at the Health Committee last Wednesday. In 2024, more than 300 in-person interactions took place. 90% success rate for in-person interactions. The goal to have 600 in-person interactions by the end of the year was achieved. 40% of the individuals have called 911 in the last 6 months, but 99% of these individuals are now enrolled in the program. So they are seeing success. They're seeing individuals come from homelessness and addiction and seeking help and continuing to see help, whether that means they're going away now to treatment or they're touching base here and getting the supports needed to be successful in their recovery. I mean, I can't say enough about our team, at the county, our partners, Paramedic, Mesa. I mean, they are groundbreakers. And often other parts of the province look to the county to say, wow, they're doing that. So actually Mike Nolan discusses with other individuals through the province how we are doing things, and people are mirroring us. So thank you for recognizing that. There are going to be some challenges going forward, obviously budgetary. A big part of our discussion last Wednesday at the county, the meeting was long, you're right. I think it ended around 2-ish, 2:30. But it was budgetary. And the way that the county's doing it this year is they're looking at 3 possibilities when it comes to their taxes. Baseline, in other words, just provide the services we can. Then there's a level 1 and a level 2, I believe, for enhanced services. So they are really looking closely at what is needed, where they can improve services, and as it affects the city of Pembroke costs, There was some decreases, there was some increases. It depended what line and what budget you were looking at. But they did say they are in touch with our treasurer and they will have a bottom line. I can't remember the date of their final budget. I want to say February 15th or something of that nature. But they're really working hard to try to provide the services that we need at an affordable rate. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I understand, Councillor Jacquino, you have a motion to move into a closed session.
I do, Your Worship. Members of council moved by myself this motion to move into a closed meeting as part of the regular meeting of council of January 21st, 2025. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Brian Abdallah, that this meeting become a closed meeting to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of lands by the municipality or local board as per section 239, subsection 2-C of the Municipal Act as it relates to a tree disposal facility.
You moved by Councillor Jacquino and seconded by the Deputy Mayor that the meeting become a closed meeting to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of lands by the municipality or local board as per section 239 sub 2 sub C of the Municipal Act as it relates to a tree disposal facility. Those in favor?
Comment first?
Sure.
Can I ask why this is going into close specifically?
Due to the potential disposition or acquisition of lands as stated.
But what parts of it need to be confidential? Like, are we discussing prices? Are we discussing, like,
Strategies therein, yes.
are there any parts of this meeting that can be done in public while other parts are done in private?
As of
There's
now,
some, I know what the material is. There's some discussions here that can be done and should be done in open. I get that there's other aspects, perhaps the strategy and if there's pricing, but what we're about to be talking about, some of it should be done in open so that the public knows what we're talking about.
that can be done via reporting out after the meeting. And it is subject to a complaint if you do not foresee it all being enclosed. As of now, we do have it labeled enclosed, but we can ascertain what can be reported out to the public once the discussion and report has been determined and closed.
I will not be supporting this motion, and I would ask for a recorded vote.
Okay, so since you requested the vote, we will call the vote for going in closed. Councillor Ian Keel,
No.
Councillor Brian Abdallah,
Yes.
Councillor Ed Jacquino,
Yes?
Andrew Plummer is absent, Councillor Troy Purcell,
No.
Councillor Pat Lafreniere,
This is confusing a little, but I'll say no.
and Mayor Ron Jerva.
Yay?
The vote is 3-3. It is tie. So we will not be going into closed.
Yes, Councillor Jacquino?
Your Worship, is there anything that would be crucial to the municipality pending the outcome of that defeated closed motion that would affect us quickly or recently or down the way? I'm just curious because obviously it was brought before us to be enclosed. There must be a particular reason. And it's not that we don't want to be transparent, but there may be some other issues that I'm not aware of that could have come up during the conversation when we were enclosed. That's my only concern.
Did you wish to speak to it or?
It's staff's opinion that it should be enclosed, and subsequently after discussion, as stated before, a report out can be done with various determining details. That will remain transparent. Also, council can direct further reports to be brought out in public at subsequent meetings. However, staff does serve at the pleasure of council, so whatever council decides, we will go through, but the recommendation is to go enclosed.
Okay, but thank you. But based upon what what Councillor Giacono is asking, without getting into any specifics, is there a timely discussion that needs to happen tonight, failing which we're not going to go into closed session? I guess what I'm trying to figure out is whether or not staff is prepared to try and discuss certain parts of this with council in open. If not, I'm going to move ahead to confirming bylaw. Does that make sense?
Had a question.
Mr. Unruh, I didn't see you on the screen.
Okay. No, I think Mr. Lewis is probably best to answer that question in regards to if the timeliness in regards to the purchase or sale of property.
Your worship, there is a potential purchase of property for the use of a tree disposal facility. That property is out for sale right now. Will it be out there next week, 2 weeks from now, when I could return? So that's the timeliness of that portion of the report. So I can come back with a report at a later date, but there is that period of time as to whether or not the property that could potentially be used as a tree disposal facility will still be available for purchase.
Understood, but it was the intention that staff had that we would be discussing it in a closed session, so no doubt the report that you wish us to banter and look at and so forth has parts of it that you do not want the general public to know about, I would imagine. Yes. And so having said that, as the chair of the meeting, I'm asking for confirming bylaw from the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Troy Purcell, that bylaw 2025-06 to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council of January 21, 2025 be adopted and passed, and further, that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Oh,
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I
It's all
didn't-
good. You did know the clerk, Madam Clerk, was behind you. Moved by the deputy mayor, second by Councillor Purcell, that bylaw 2025-06 to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council, January 21st, 2025, be adopted and passed, and further said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Those in favor? That is carried. And a motion to adjourn. I have the deputy mayor, second by Councillor Keel. Those in favor? We are adjourned.